Hello, welcome back to Non-synchronous online course. In the previous module, you have learned the role of organizations and companies in preventing the proliferation of dual-use biological materials, equipment, and knowledge. The content of this module will be helpful to you in understanding how violation of international norms can bring penalties to organizations, companies, or revisionist proliferator states. If your organization or company follows biosecurity best practices, there is no need to worry about penalties or sanctions. This module will highlight sanction regimes against the revisionist proliferator states, organizations, and companies. Let's get it started. Sanction regimes against revisionist states is a very broad topic. From this online course perspective, I will narrow it down to provide the essence of the topic. I will highlight some important points as a part of the background for sanctions. Then I will briefly highlight the global sanctions regimes and cover US sanction regimes as an example. We will see how US sanction regimes can contribute to reducing the biosecurity risks at global level. It is very important to bear in mind that biological and chemical weapons are indiscriminate in their application. All of us knows that biological and chemical weapons have deadly effects. Because of advances in science and technology, biological and chemical weapons technologies have become more advanced and even more lethal. Biological and chemical weapons have inhuman effects. Furthermore, the effects of biological and chemical weapons can last for generations, and some effects could be irreversible. Therefore, we have to make sure that there is a tight control over the biological and chemical weapons enabling materials, equipment, and technologies. Hence, from this online course perspective, preventing proliferation of dual-use biological materials, equipment, and knowledge is essential to avoid the spread of biological and or chemical weapons enabling materials and tools. The unlawful trade or export of dual-use biological materials, their derivatives and toxins, and biological manufacturing facilities and equipment can contribute to the spread of biological weapon-enabling materials and tools. Therefore, we need to regulate we need to have a regulatory mechanism to deal with violators of the international norms. That's why sanction regimes comes in the picture. If you think holistically, you will realize that sanctions are a powerful tool. Sanctions are an important part of the foreign policy of developed countries. The main aim of sanctions is to alter the behavior of governments or political actors in targeted nations who violate international norms and treaties or threaten the regional or global biosecurity and interests of global community. International bodies such as the United Nations and European Union can impose economic sanctions to force, deter, punish, or shame entities that violate international norms or biological interests. National governments can also impose economic sanctions to organizations, companies, any entities or countries that endanger regional or global biosecurity and our interests. Sanctions are effective and can help to prevent the unlawful proliferation of biological and chemical weapons of mass destruction. In addition, sanctions can be used to counter terrorism and narcotics, to promote democracy and human rights, to stop conflicts, and to reduce cyber biosecurity. The Security Council of the United Nations may respond to global threats by cutting economic ties with revisionist proliferator states and non-state groups. The United Nations sanctions are global in nature. The European Union sanctions, also known as restrictive measures, are part of their common foreign and security policy. However, individual European Union states and other countries may also impose tougher sanctions independently within their national jurisdiction. The United States has more than 24 sanctions regimes. I'm going to take US sanction regimes as an example. If you consider the global financial system, international banks network, and the importance of American currency, I mean US dollar, in the global financial system, you will realize that the US sanction regimes can have global impact. In fact, they have. Hence, we are going to take the US sanction regimes as an example. As an example, we will see the US trade regulation and sanctions against revisionist states. Here, we are using the term revisionist states. In case if you are not clear about its meaning, bear in mind that revisionist states are countries whose objective is to change or put an end to current existing systems. To prevent the proliferation of biosecurity sensitive biological materials, equipment, and knowledge, compliance to international norms and treaties or conventions is essential. Strict compliance is important, whether you are doing violation knowingly or unknowingly, or it's intentional or unintentional. Violation is violation. Authorities of the US government deals with revisionist states and entities through its executive and legislative branches or through other authorities and engagements. The US law and order system is considered as a very robust system. The US system can find the law violators and proliferation activities within United States and internationally, and can impose the sanctions. Because of time limitation, it will be difficult to cover all the agencies and or departments of US sanction regimes. However, as an example, we will see how US Department of Commerce, US Department of State, and US Department of the Treasury contributes towards imposing and implementing sanctions against entities and revisionist proliferator states. In the United States, the reporting requirements are very important. Even the failure to report compliance can constitute some act of non-compliance. So compliance with reporting requirements is essential to engaging in a profitable international trade and chemical and biological materials in the US. So it makes reporting requirements not only apply to the US, but any country or company outside of US who wants to do business with the United States. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the US Department of Commerce. The mission of Department of Commerce is to create the conditions for economic growth and opportunity for all communities. Its export administration regulations governs the export of controlled commodities, software, or goods. It also provides the consolidated screening list. It is a list of parties for which the United States government maintains restrictions on certain exports, re-exports, or transfer of items. You can always use the consolidated screening list search engine to screen potential buyers and end users to comply with US government regulations. You may find entities by selecting the country. To make it easy to stakeholders, it provides the list of denied persons, unverified list, entity list, and military end user list. Denied persons list provides the information on individuals and entities that have been denied export privileges, because the violation can be at individual level or as an entity. Unverified list provides the information on end users who BIS has been unable to verify in prior transactions. Entity list provides the information on parties whose presence in the or in a transaction can trigger a license requirement supplemental to those elsewhere in the export administration regulations. Military end user list contains list of parties whose presence in a transaction triggers license requirements for select items subject to the export administration regulations. Information on how you can avoid dealing with unauthorized parties is also provided to protect all stakeholders. The United States imposes sanctions under various legal authorities against foreign individuals, private entities, and governments that engage in proliferation activities. Under the consolidated screening list, US Department of Commerce also provides information on non-proliferation sanctions, which provides the list of parties that have been sanctioned under various statutes. AECA debarred list also provided, which lists entities and individuals prohibited from participating directly or indirectly in the export of defense articles, including technical data and defense services. The AECA debarred list includes persons convicted in court of violating or conspiring to violate the AECA. US Department of Commerce also provides various lists and links to the list provided by Department of the Treasury, Office of Foreign Assets Control. Some examples of the lists includes specially designated nationals list. It is a list of parties who may be prohibited from export transactions based on Office of Foreign Assets Controls regulations. Foreign sanctions evaders list. It is a list of foreign individuals and entities determined to have violated attempted to violate, conspired to violate, or caused a violation of US sanctions. If organizations and companies violate international norms and serves as enablers of proliferation of biological materials, equipment, and knowledge, then US Department of Commerce can include them to the entity list. Once the organization or company or a person is listed by the US Department of Commerce, it affects the business of the entity or organization or that person. That entity or person could be out of business. Hence, sanctions serves as a powerful tool in preventing the proliferation of biosecurity sensitive biological materials, equipment, and knowledge. You may visit the resource link provided for the additional information, which is at the bottom of the slide. Okay, let's consider the US Department of State and its role. The US Department of State is an executive department of the United States federal government. It is responsible for the nation's foreign policy and international relations. Broadly speaking, the mission of the US Department of State is to lead the foreign policy by advancing the interests of security and economic prosperity. From security and biosecurity perspective, Arms Export Control Act and international traffic in arms regulations are important. Arms Export Control Act provides the authority and general rules for the conduct of foreign sales of defense articles, defense services, and training. It plays an important role in preventing the proliferation of security-sensitive defense articles, defense services, and training. International traffic in arms regulations applies to military products. It plays an important role in security and biosecurity sensitive items export control. There are 21 categories of articles on the United States munitions list. Category number 14 covers the toxicological agents, including chemical agents, biological agents, and associated equipment. This is important as we are discussing protecting biological materials, equipment, and knowledge. The US Department of State enforces trade restrictions and sanctions enforcement. The State Department leads diplomatic efforts to encourage compliance from all countries concerning all regulated dangerous goods and services. The Directorate of Defense Trade Controls administers the ITAR for the US Department of State. The Office of Economic Sanctions, Policy and Implementation is responsible for developing and implementing foreign policy-related sanctions adopted to counter security and biosecurity threats posed by particular activities and countries, including revisionist proliferator states. The US Department of State plays an important role in enforcing sanctions to maximize its economic impact on targets, revisionist states, and minimize the security and biosecurity risks. Now, let's consider the US Department of Treasury and its role. While doing the business, including trading of the biological materials, equipment, and proprietary information or technology transfer, banking and finance plays an important role. For every organization, company, and country, finance is the backbone for normal functioning. The US Department of the Treasury plays an important role for the US as well as in the world economy. The CAATSA, which stands for Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions, is aimed at revisionist states. Currency and Foreign Transaction Act, which is also known as Bank Secrecy Act, and our anti-money laundering law, is a US law requiring financial institutions in the United States to assist US government agencies in detecting and preventing money laundering. Hence, it's not difficult to identify the activities of the revisionist proliferator states or their agents, as well as organizations and companies in the business of the biological materials and equipment. Office of Foreign Assets Control has oversight for all sanctions, focusing on perpetrators and organizes its jurisdiction and effort via lists searchable by the public. The Office of Foreign Assets Control is a financial intelligence and enforcement agency of the US Treasury Department. Office of Foreign Assets Control enforces economic sanctions in the US and internationally. Sanctions could be against parties associated with a blocked party. Sanction could be against anyone facilitating a prohibited transaction, or sanction could be against individuals or businesses exceeding scope of license or scope of an exemption. Please take note of this. Specially designated nationals list provides the information about parties prohibited from export transactions based on regulations. As part of enforcement efforts, Office of Foreign Assets Control publishes a list of individuals and companies or organizations owned or controlled by or acting for or on behalf of targeted countries. Office of Foreign Assets Control lists individuals, groups, and entities designated under programs that are not country specific. Collectively, such individuals and companies are called specially designated nationals. Their assets are blocked, and US persons and companies are generally prohibited from dealing with them. From security and biosecurity perspective, foreign sanctions evaders list is important. Foreign individuals and entities determined to have violated, attempted to violate, conspired to violate, or caused a violation of US sanctions, and foreign persons who have facilitated deceptive transactions for or on behalf of persons subject to the US sanctions are listed under foreign sanctions evaders list. Non-SDN menu-based sanctions list is published by the Department of the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, which is also called as OFAC. The list serves as a reference tool that identifies persons subject to certain sanctions. The specific sanctions will be enumerated on a record-by-record basis on non-SDN menu-based sanctions list. The sanctions are less than full blocking sanctions. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, to summarize this module, I want to highlight few important points. Point number 1 is sanctions are a very important tool to prevent the unlawful proliferation of biological materials, equipment, and proprietary information. Point number 2 is global sanctions regimes plays an important role to deter and alter the behavior of revisionist proliferator states. Point number 3 is the US sanction regimes contributes significantly to preventing the unlawful proliferation of biosecurity sensitive biological materials, equipment, and proprietary information. Okay, after going through this module, you might be clear about what can happen if the organizations and companies don't follow biosecurity best practices or international norms. In this module, you also learn global sanctions regimes. As a biological researcher and a stakeholder of the biological supply chains, you should be aware of sanctions. In the next module, you will learn the consequences of non-compliance. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video. Until then, take care and stay safe.